Hello everyone, I recorded this video back a month ago. Didn't have any audio instructions, so I'm adding it now. So as you can see here, I'm choosing my primitive, which is a sphere. It's a quad sphere, all the mesh is made up of quads. And I'm going to reduce the resolution down to 3 and center it. And we're going to take the move tool and open up the as far as it will go and just start pulling down from the center of the sphere. And once we get our chin depth, we can start working on other things, such as, well, what we want to do here is pull the skull, the jaw line out. So we are just gently nudging it here and there. As you can see, the mesh is deforming, stretching, but I'm not worried about that right now. We're looking here for an egg shape, flat on the sides, and we do want to taper it down to the chin. That chin then, because our jaws are like a horseshoe. And you'll notice that I'm flattening it out, not from the very back, but kind of from the center forward. And there's a reason for that. Where I am right now, that's where the ears are going. That, in fact, is the widest part of our heads. So you can pretty well do this video on your own, do this exercise on your own, just by watching the visuals and what I do. But I think the audio will help. So I'm using the flatten tool here, and I really do want to taper the front. You can see that more and more. And the idea here is not to form the detailed head, but to get a basic shape. And some of it we're going to add to, and some of it we're going to subtract from, and you'll see how it all works together to form. Now we're getting a nice shape here where we have the round part of the skull at the back, and now the front jaw is tapered downwards a little bit. And I'm using the flat tool again because we do want crisp, clean lines on for the jawline. So now we're going to take care of the mesh. So I'm using the soften tool with the relax modifier, which means it's not going to alter it a whole lot. It's just going to evenly spread out the quads. And we're going to use multi-resolution and go one level up. With one level, you can easily still manipulate the mesh, and it gives you enough resolution to be able to create some finer details, though at this stage we're not too interested in that. This is the center of the jaw. To the right of that line is where your ear canal is in the skull. So this is a marker for the ear. And as you can see, our skulls aren't really round at the top. They're kind of flattish at the top. Male skulls have a tapered forehead on the back. Female skulls, the forehead is more vertical. So yeah, we're looking good here. And by the way, I always sculpt with smooth shading turned off, because I like to see the effects of my brush. And with smooth shading off, basically that's affecting the normals and how we can see the mesh. But yeah, I like to work in this rougher stage. So the skull is a little boxy, and I like that. So I'm going to add, I did say this was from a sphere. And I guess what I meant by that is I'm not going to be adding like, something like this for the chin and all sorts of things. We can create the head from a sphere, and now we're just putting in a cylinder for the neck with a slight bevel backwards, and centered where I've got it there will work. I'm not too concerned about the resolution of the here we've joined them and we've used a voxel mesh. I think if you start at about 60 to 80 and then voxel remesh the two primitives together, that should work nicely. The soften tool here does a good job still. And so we're just blending the seams, and at the back of the skull where we had those ridges, we really just want to completely soften that up, and that's just with the soften tool. We don't want to touch the front really with a little bit, just take a little bit of the mesh squares, the defined mesh squares, soften them up. So I think we're going to put ears now, and I use cylinders for ears as well. So it'll come in, and can't bring in the chin out. Yeah, that back jaw, that always, no matter what I do, that's always a bit high, so I like to adjust that, pull it out from the neck a bit as well. So I have snap set to 90 degrees. So if you use the blue part of the ring, that'll snap at 90 instead of taking guesses as to what's straight and what isn't. So I'm using my mark on the side of the skull, and that's the center of that sphere or cylinder. And I'm going to squish it a bit because the ear isn't round, and I'm going to bring it down because the center of that should line up with our ear canals, which are part of the skull. And so I'm going to play with it a bit here and just make sure I got it where I want it. I've got a mirror on, so as long as your model is symmetrical, then if you use the mirror, then it will mirror off to the other side in the correct place. So also a trick here is make sure that the ear, the back of the ear, is a good distance away from the head. You don't really want it too close, because when you go to revoxel, it'll be a mess. So I think I'm climbing up here to I don't know, that might be about 90 to 100. And I'm just going to clean it up a little bit, soften up the edges. There. And you can see that the back of my ear is clearly away from the back of the skull. So I'm using the clay tool with the minus modifier, subtraction, and that's your ear canal right there and behind. Now I'm going to pull the ear lobe out and in and just shape it a little bit. I'm not too concerned right now. They say if you look at the ear from the back like that, you're looking at producing somewhat of an S shape. All right, so now this is really good. With your ears in place, we know that the eyes have to line up with the top of the ear, and the nose lines up with the bottom of the ear. So now we're in a good place to begin adding our eyes. And I'm just gonna subtract out the mesh there. And as you can see, I'm starting at the top of the ear. And I'm coming in close enough because this is the nose bridge. Now we're just going to cut away And as cut away, and then around the barrel of the mouth like that. And then we're going to take away some of the clay there. And this is where, you know, subtracting from your model can be as effective as adding to your model. So here's our nose bridge. And because we've cut away on both sides of that, we can pull it out like this quite easily. And of course, I'm not too concerned about, you know, is it the perfect nose? So what you'll see me do this, I'll cut and then I'll use the soften tool, and that's just constant. So I've been calling it the soften tool, but it's actually the smooth tool. Back into clay, and I'm subtracting again. So what I'm going to do here is, using a very sharp fall off, I'm going to cut around at the base of the nose. Again, subtracting from the model, from the mesh. And this is really what I've been taught to do, because the primitive we start with doesn't necessarily give us the planes of the face. So we need to clearly define the nose. We're going to be actually cutting the nose out of the primitive. And I think we're heading over to the cheekbone. So as you can see, the resolution, let's say at this point it's about 100. It works really well for adding and subtracting, and then smoothing. And it's so easy there. As you can see, we're shooting. I think we need to be willing to work in these rougher stages. Just get yourself comfortable with it, because you know, if you make a mistake, you just redo. And so on each side of the nose, there's this fleshy area that it's not sharp. It's very softly tapered from the top of the nose back to the front of the face. So I'm just filling in there, and I will smooth it out. And then this is the barrel of the mouth. It has to be defined, so we're just putting that in there. And then this actually isn't the mouth. This is the indentation between the chin and the mouth, which I haven't actually put. The mouth is the last thing to do. All the other stuff is really quite important to get right before you do the mouth. So under the chin here, you should develop, this is again something that just step 5 sort of thing, like you always do it. That's your Adam's apple. But if you look at the side profile of a face, you always have this triangle in there. So I'm just filling it in. I don't really care what it looks like, because I'm going to use the smooth tool, and that's just going to even everything out. Soften it. As you can see, it's just starting to take on shape. This is really the fun stage of sculpting, I think. And you know what I really find refreshing about the way I do my sculpts now is I used to spend a lot of time with just the move brush. I'd move in and move out, and rearrange vertices and faces and lines, and it was actually pretty frustrating because I had to make this change, make that change. I spent hours, and I really, in the end, it still looked the same. So, I really like this because it's quick, it's decisive, and I've probably have done this 100 times. I've watched the same videos over and over, and it's like riding a bike. Yeah, once you get it in your system, your muscle memory takes over, and you just follow through with the stages. I think I did this original sculpt just laying in bed one morning before I started my day, and it took me about an hour and 27 minutes. And I didn't stop. There was nothing, because at this point, I had done it so many times that it was just all memorized. So here I'm cutting in above the lip, cutting in the nostrils, and really I'm just marking the nostrils. And here I'm actually increasing the resolution because I do need some smaller quads now to start getting some clean cuts in where the nostrils are. So I'm probably at a voxel remeshing. I've probably climbed to about one. Let's see if I can see that. I can't even read that. 173 or something like that. So again, I'm just defining the nostril, adding, subtracting. Yeah. So as you can see from the front of the nose, it starts to taper back. And again, I'm cutting. And you might think, boy, this is really severe, but because you're going to smooth afterwards, and you don't want to smooth away your work, like that's what I've got there is what I want. So I use the smooth tool, and that just gently cleans it up. Looks like I got the flat tool there. Oh yeah, I'm flattening the side of the... So here's a tip, especially with the nose and the sides of the face. If you kind of feel like, you're going this way and that way with softer shapes, just go back to using the flat tool and sort of work with planes, and you'll find that quickly you'll start restoring the simplicity and the defined look that you want. And again, everything is movable. So I have filled in around just below the eye there a bit. It's not finished, obviously. You can see some of the planes there on the side of the face. You've got in front of the ear, you've got a large flat plane, and then I'm working on the front, behind or beside the mouth. There's another flat plane there, and these planes are very helpful. Now I'm looking at the shape of the chin. Of course, I want that close to a horseshoe type shape, and now with the mouth, I want sort of a round area there. And the reason being is you never add lips to the front, to the surface of your mesh. You always cut your lips into the mesh. So I'm just giving myself enough volume. And of course, just underneath the nose there, at the top lip where you have that little fork, it's never starting at the back. It starts forward on the nose, and I'm just putting in the brow ridge there, and then I'm probably gonna just cut above it. I'll see what I'm gonna do, but you can smooth it, I guess. Okay, so I'm going to soften the top of that head a little bit. But you can see there I'm back to flattening out the top. And now the sides of the head are tapered a little better. And of course, on the left and the right of the eye, there's always a plane there, because if you look at the original skull, this is a bony landmark. Every skull has these slight bumps on it. Some are more pronounced than others, but I just decided to put it in there. But on either side of the eye, you can see a large flat plane, and most of us, you can see that pretty clearly. And I think I'm going to cut away a bit of that. Yeah, there you go. I'm going to cut away. If you look at a skull is actually a better reference for doing these than let's say a picture of a fully fleshed out human head, because it shows you the structure of what every head basically looks like. So now this little area here I'm working is, you have to soften that out, because that's just the way it is, but that's the way the body is, the skull. All right. So again, going back to doing some flattening. And you can always soften this, but it's really a great way to restore. Now, with the nose, that slit, everybody has that. Some people it's hidden and some people it's not. So I decided, because I'm doing a video, I wanted it to be anatomically correct. So there, I'm just showing that. I'm not sure. Okay, so yeah, I'm digging out a bit here. So this is important here, that you've got the larger eye area dug out, and now, especially in this area, you need a little more depth. And I think I might be starting to put in the eyelids. Yeah. So this is the flesh that basically covers the eyeball. And above it is the skull. You can take your fingers and feel that. So the soft tissue is below the orbital opening. So I'm just putting in, there's your lateral eye, what do they call that? Eyelid, I don't know. Not too good with remembering all these labels. Yeah. So I'm just fleshing it out. And the bottom eyelid. You see the angle there from the inside to the outside? That is typical. Most people's eyes, the closest to the nose is pointing down. Not too severe, just slight. And I'm just getting, basically, you know, what I'm doing here is I'm creating boundaries for the eyeball that I'm going to be putting in. And that's your tear drain area. And again, you know, I'm working rough. I'm just marking out boundaries and softening. It looks like I'm going to move the shape of the brow ridge around a little bit. So I'm just using the move tool, I believe. Back in with the clay brush, and I'm cutting away and smoothing. And here I'm adding, so this is the cheek area, and this is where it joins up with around the barrel of the mouth. That's your chewing muscle there. So, you know, that's something that you can put in and blend it in a lot at the back, not so much at the front. That's my train. I live with that train. I don't live on the train. But anyways, I don't hear it too much anymore, but can't avoid it. In 24 hours we get 30 trains. So there's a UV sphere. And UV sphere isn't a quad sphere. And so I don't use them that often, but I will use them here for the eyes. And again, if you're working off a skull reference, that eyeball should be the size of your orbital skull opening. And then you just set it back. And that's why I've already defined the eyelids here, because now I can place it where I want it. But basically it's centered there in the eye orbital area of the skull. And that little black part, that is the center of the UV sphere, which I always rotate it forward, just because I like to those are my dogs. Okay. Shush, 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 shush. Now, here's something to keep in mind, that when you're, I don't know if the video is going to go back to the side profile, but you should be able to measure from the top of the brow to the bottom of the lid, and then the sphere tip, front of the sphere should be just touching that imaginary line. There you go. So I think my eyeball might be protruding out too far there. And yeah, that's your little tear duct I'm putting in right now. But Walter, hey, quiet. And I've really overdone the outside of that eye there. That's ridiculous. But I'll soften it. Yeah, the top part there always hangs over past the bottom of the eyelid. I'm smooth. I love this. When I always turn on I love turning on the mesh, the wireframe. I feel a lot of times I can do a better job because I have a visual of all the lines and how the mesh is deforming or whether it's... So I always encourage people to do that. Now this is how you make the mouth. You just carve in a dot on both sides, join it, cut away on the sides like that. And you notice I'm not pulling, right? I'm not doing any pulling out and trying to cut in or draw lips. I'm just cutting away. And then we're gonna fill in for the center of the top lip. I'll probably end up taking the move tool and just moving on that up in the center. So we're filling in the underside of the lip, giving it some shape. Cutting away at the bottom. I think I'm going to move to the bottom lip now. So you're going to be taking either a lot of times I use the flat brush here, but definitely you want to cut away underneath that bottom lip. And then you want to flatten out the sides, not severely, but just flatten them out like that, because the lip does not protrude from the face on the sides. So it has to be flush, like gradual flat area. And this area here has to be slightly tapered. So again, that's probably using a flat brush there. There we go. I'm lifting up the center of the lip. As you can see, the resolution is still fairly low. So, you know, you're seeing that facet, those facets, but you know, they're not scary. They're just part of the mesh, and just smooth them out. And there you go. I think that's 200 now. Now I do take a clay brush and I go right across the front of the bottom lip, but also I'm filling in at the top there. There you go. Not too much. And the lip has these little bulges on both sides of the center, like the bottom lip there. And then the top lip, I emphasize the center pillow, and then just taper off and feather out on either side. And the top lip on the left and right, the red part of the lip actually begins to recede back into the mouth. And so I am just simply going to draw down the surface of that, the mouth on the left and right in the corners. But I do need that cut in the middle. So there we go. Okay, a little smoothing. So it's rough, but it's taking on shape. It's recognizable. It's a little narrow. That mouth's a little narrow right now. I can bring it down. The mesh is still very movable, very pliable. So this is a great time to, you know, get your proportions right. However you want to. Everybody is different in certain ways, but we all share the same anatomy of the skull. So that's the beauty of being able to, you know, you may not necessarily use a reference when you sculpt a head, but if you've spent enough time doing your homework and memorizing what a skull looks like and what to put in, where to put it, then you are using a reference. You're using your mind, the images that you have in your mind. But I know a lot of times when I need to use a reference, and because I've forgotten, And our brains will always reproduce the same thing. It's the image in our minds that we think something looks like, and that will always be there. It'll trip us up every time, and that's why references are so important, because it gets our mind to recognize, do away with the not so accurate image and input a higher or more accurate image. So here I'm just softly defining the muscles and tissues and of the cheeks and the mouth barrel. I undercut the lip there just to get just in the middle, right? Just to give it some definition, some shadow. And that trapezoid there above the chin, that's a great way to set off the lip and chin. It's a lot of faces have that, maybe not as clearly defined, but now here I've taken the crease tool, and as you can see, I have a very small brush here, but high intensity, and there's my mesh. So you can see I'm only going to get so much detail with that mesh. It's still fairly, I mean, it looks dense, but for these fine textures like this, you're still going to run into trouble. But you don't want to get to a fine, dense, like a high resolution mesh. You don't want to get there that fast. You want to be able to do all this stuff without fighting with it, because you know, when your brush starts making lines on both sides of the fall off, you know your resolution is way too high. And I often work with voxel remeshing. I used to have a real tendency to only stick with multi-resolution, and really the truth of the matter is that multi-resolution works well for some things but not for other things. I find sculpting ahead from primitives like this, voxel remeshing, really does the best job. But it's just my opinion. Okay, where am I at now? Multi-res. Okay, so this is interesting. So we just finished talking about how I like to use voxel remeshing. Well, now that I've gotten to this stage where I'm really going to start putting in some fine details around the eyes and this and that, here I'm shaping the mouth, making sure that the lips are parallel and that they're not too far out. But this is where I need the higher resolution. So what I'll do is I'll voxel remesh up to this stage, and then I'll actually go into multi-resolution, and then start subdividing, and it just gives a beautiful smooth finish at this point, where you can add details and still be able to smooth. And you've got four levels at least that you can climb, but I mean, this is level 1, I believe, and you can see I gotta do the ears still. Okay, this is your muscles that start underneath the, well, I don't know if it's a muscle. It's a thing. It goes from the ear down to the center, and it joins to your collarbone. And then you have that one there, and then you have these back. These are your, I think they're your trapezoids, and they look like that. So again, you know, obviously I'm just doing a very rough approach, and then go in for a smooth. And up near the ears, they don't have to stick out so much, so I don't know if I'll end up, I might be pulling the neck out a bit here. Yeah. Just to give it a bit of a base. I'll probably pull the front down. That's a nice way to display these models, is pull the front of the neck down, taper it down. And And then at the back it can be up a little further, but yeah, not too concerned about the base really. It's okay, here I'm rounding the back of the skull, and I think it's time for the ears. So the ears often, but you know, if you're going to draw an ear, you start with a question mark, which is the outside of the ear, and then on the inside of the ear you have a Y shape. So this is where it comes around the front of the ear and it travels down into the canal. So I'm going to dig that out a bit. And then I'll just take my, well, this is my clay brush in subtraction mode. And then I'm going to take that off and then draw down into the canal. Just go cut around into the ear to define the outside ridge. Yeah, the fall offs, I do change fall offs. This pointy one works good here. Yeah, so there you go. That's how I'm getting that finer down into the canal, and then the little ridge around inside the ear. And this is where the Y is. And I'm just getting the basic shape. Everybody has an ear, so you can always look in the mirror if you're not sure. Or sometimes what I'll do is this is one of those images that I keep forgetting, and so every once in a while I have an image in Nomad that I pull up, and I just put it on the background to remind myself, you know, what an accurate ear looks like. And you see this outside rim, especially near the top, it's actually a fold over. You know, you can put your finger, you can behind it and pull it out a little bit. It's not severe. I've never really gone that far. I will dig it out just to give the appearance of a flap. Of course, I moved my model around, and now I'm going to probably subtract that. It's attached to the skull, the ears attached to the skull too far up on the ear. So one difficulty I've had is the shape of the ear. You know, it's not that complicated, but just for some reason I have a better idea now, but it's just something that doesn't always stick with me. So I'm cutting away there, and I'm probably going to do the same at the top. But yeah, let's get away from pushing and pulling and just start cutting and adding, smoothing. And I think I use the inflate tool there to get the earlobe. I'll fine tune it and flatten it and smooth it. Now there, if you notice, if you look at a person's face head on, like, you don't see the start of the ear, and that's because it's recessed there. That's why I'm cutting that away. And then I'll smooth that out to a soft taper. There you go. There, see, it disappeared. So, I think the whole point of this was just to show the workflow that I go through in creating anatomically correct human head. I could have gone on to work on this, but I felt like what I wanted to show I've accomplished. So let's see how much time's left on this. I'm at 45 minutes. Boy. I think I'm going to bring that. Okay, so this is interesting. You'll find with a lot of times with ears, if you're looking at a person right head on, this is the part you're going to see. You're not going to see the outside flaps as much as you're going to see that center area protruding out. So that's the first thing I always do is I pull that center area out. Okay, I think it's time for cuts. Here we go. Yeah. And it doesn't matter what it looks like. Basically, you're doing enough to pull out the smooth tool and let it do its thing. I still think that needs to be cut out there. I hope he does it. Oh, that's me. Okay, there we go. That's my ridiculous sense of humor. Okay. This is the first time I've ever watched one of my own videos and did a voiceover. Well, I remember doing this. I wasn't real happy with this. I was trying to get a more defined line, but it was way too sharp. So I'm going to soften it out. I know I'm going to soften it out, but I wouldn't recommend you do that, what I just did there. You can just use the normal clay brush. I think I might have used the sharp brush, which I learned from Eric 3D from the site, where he just created this sharp brush where you have a high intensity and a very, very sharp fall off, and you just save it and relabel it, and there you always have it. Of course, it's really only useful when you get your resolution up to higher levels. For me, anyways, that's when I use it most. There seems to always be a flat area at the top of the ear, where the flap is. It's like almost has a straight area. I don't know if I'll do that there or not. And here I'm just adding more definition. Still adjusting the head, making it a little thinner. And to me, those ears at the top are sticking out too far. So I don't know if I'll end up... Oh, look at my head starting to get a little chunky. And that's because my resolution is up there. And so when you try moving the mesh, it becomes more difficult. And also the back of the head is too far out. See those ears? Those ears are where they should be, but the back of the head needs to come forward. I don't think I'll get that done here, but... We're going to work on the eyes a little bit. Having the eyeball in at this stage is really great for just finishing up the detail around the eye. So this might be the sharp brush. Basically a very sharp fall off. Put in the tear duct. So I've got my little squares are small enough now where I can do that. And these are pretty big. I think I'll probably end up softening a lot of that out, but yeah, that's definitely too pronounced. From the side of the head, the eyelids should form a V, top and bottom. And here I'm just fleshing in the eye level, eye area, and defining the boundaries between one area of the face and the other. Yeah, I think I picked up on that. The shape of the eyes are something I've always struggled with too. I don't know why certain things just don't stick with me. I always have to remind myself. But, you know, from the inside, see, you can see the curve in the top eyelid, and it needs to be even, it needs to run parallel. See, there I'm fixing it. Run parallel to the surface of the eyeball. Because it's resting on it. It's protecting it. There you go. That's better. I like that. And, you know, I'll tell you, like, just so people don't get discouraged, I've experienced this, and the guy that has probably influenced me the most, his channel, he goes by Speedchar, does a lot of work with ZBrush and recently Blender, but how to sculpt a head in under an hour. That is the video that I've watched over and over and over again, and he's a professional. He's a funny guy. He's a nice guy, and really enjoyed his tutorials. So, but he said, you know, like, don't beat yourself up. Like, we can forget how to do this. Like, you might, let's say, one day spend several hours, you know, working on your skills to sculpt a head, and then you go to bed, and then the next day wake up, and it's like you've completely forgotten everything you've learned, and you start, and it's terrible. And he says it's just like a warm-up period. You need to refresh and get reacquainted. And so, you know, I've done so many heads, and yet see, I got to pull out this eyelid. The bottom eyelid needs to be in from the top eyelid, but I'm just, right now here, I'm just evening this out. It's a bit bumpy, eh? Now I'm going to pull it out. Come on, pull that out. Don't make a liar out of me. Yeah, so, you know, go easy on yourself. Enjoy the process. It's an exciting thing to learn. Myself, like, I've been renovating homes for 35 years. Well, over 35 years. I'm almost retired now. But this is what I'm doing in my retirement, and I really think it's worth learning. It's very rewarding, and you can be part of a bigger community. And you know, the sad thing, I'll just make a comment about Facebook groups. I've been in a couple, and they have thousands of members, but you always got the silent majority. And really, the death of a group is when people stop contributing. don't be afraid. Like, share what you know, share what you got. If you learn something, that's the best time to share it with somebody else. So I'd really encourage anybody listening to this video to be as involved as, let's say you only look at the group once a week. Well, take some time to like people's work, encourage them, tell them what you like about it. And that's how these groups thrive, and they offer a good positive experience for everybody. So that's just my 2 cents. So I think I'm just going over, obviously, like that back of the ear, it's not very clean. Oh, I'm going to sneeze. Oh. Got away from that one. Yeah, I'm just cleaning up here. I don't know. I could have finished this video already, but that's just me. I see something, I do something. You can see around the ear, like, see how it looks a little rough in there? Like, I just finished doing a retopology of a sculpt of a woman that I did, a head sculpt, head bust. And then I took it into Blender and I retopologized and then brought it back into Nomad, and I've got all the face loops where they need to be, the edge loops around the eyes and mouth and face. Wow, does it ever make a difference, especially for those ears where the loops are where they need to be and you don't see that same roughness that I see here. So I'm going to be doing another video introducing that base mesh, and I'll make it available for a free download, and you can play with it, and I think you'll really enjoy working with it. It's just like butter, it's beautiful. So the difference is, like, we're sculpting here, like we're, this isn't polygon modeling, and I started off polygon modeling, and of course, it has its limits because you can only, like, the file sizes, every time you use subdivision, and the file size just gets so big. So you really do need to learn how to sculpt and be able to create these models and then retopologize. And then you've got your high definition model, your low definition model. You can bake the normals so that the low looks like the high without all the dense mesh and resolution, and you can complete the whole pipeline. Go on to animate it. I'm not quite there yet. So I have enough resolution here just to start drawing in some eyebrows, and the direction of these hairs, like, that's accurate, like how that goes. I mean, it doesn't look super real, but at least I'm showing you that, the hair starts in one direction and then starts shifting over on its side, and then by the time you get off to the side, it's really laying on its side. So anyways, well, I hope you've enjoyed watching this with a voiceover, and I took a pretty relaxed approach, not very professional, but feel free to leave a comment. I noticed that some people, I made some very quick tutorials back when I first started using Nomad, and I wasn't doing voiceover, and a couple people got frustrated with me because they couldn't understand what I was doing because there was no voice. So I'm going to start moving more towards these voiceover tutorials, and I enjoy learning, and it's just an amazing thing. Like, information largely in this day and age is free, so take advantage of it. And I like to give back because I've received so much. I just love learning. I'm a very curious person. So anyways, if you enjoyed it, give me a thumbs up, or if you want to ask a question, you can put that in the comments. I downloaded YouTube Studio just to notify me of comments and stuff, because I found that some of the comments were months old and I didn't even know they were there. So If I'm going to do these things, I should take some time just to make sure that somebody says something, writes something. The least I can do is write back. Anyways, who's he look like? I don't know. It's not me. But I don't think my wife would throw him out of bed for eating crackers. There we go. Yeah, you can see there a bit of a ridge in the back of the skull. I'm going to try and take that out. Yeah, it's not perfect. You see a bit of a hollow there. Don't really like that too much. But anyways, like I said, this is something, it's basically a workflow. I'm showing you what I do to arrive at a product that can be further worked on. And, hopefully I've made some contribution to your learning curve. And let's see how much further we got. Another 2 or 3 minutes. Because I'm doing the voiceover, I can actually see the video playing. Oh, there we go. I'm bringing, yeah, bring those ears in, especially at the back. Yeah, come on. Bring the center. There we go. I like that. And I'll let a little secret. That's not a really secret, but it was a secret for me. Is face modeling is all about nuance. It's unbelievable. We all have the same features, and for the most part, we're very similar at a macro level. But little tiny changes in the shape of a nose or the size of a nostril or a bony landmark, or whether the cheek has got some flesh on it or whether it's sunken in a bit. These things have drastic inputs or impacts to how we look. And so just bear that in mind if you're interested in doing likeness sculpting, which is very, very, very difficult. It takes a long time. I do like it, but I've had to back off because it can be very frustrating. So I like to do a lot of these generic head busts just to get it as familiar with human anatomy for the skull and the face as possible, and then move on to likeness sculpts once I have that good solid base under me. But yeah, I'm just fine-tuning the nose here, and of course there's all sorts of different types of noses. This is just one. But anything I'm doing here, I'm more or less concerned not about shape, but you see where the nostril flare is and the bottom and the little parted piece in the middle and like all those things. That's not about shape, that's about anatomy. So there's your, now if you look at a skull, that's where your nose bridge is, right? So you can show that. Like some people, you can see it really clearly, and some people you don't. Fill in a little bit, soften it. A little bit of an eye bag there. You get a little older, you get those. I've got bags on top of bags. Yeah, so it's not perfect, but I think it falls well within the it's a good example, I think, of a human face, and like I say, this is a generic model. I'm not trying to make it look like anybody. Has all the participating parts.